Hi, everyone. I'm Erin, and I'm a program coordinator with the Climate and Energy Project. And I help coordinate the Kansas Environmental Youth Network, which is a youth advocacy tier to our work. Key Network's mission and main goals are to connect youth organizations across Kansas, create a space to collaborate, and build power for youth action, advocacy, and climate justice. We're driven by three main pillars: equity, unity, and change. And while we're still getting started building in our network, this space was born from the ideas brought forward at 2021 Wealth Days Youth Panel. Several CEP interns across this last year have laid groundwork and started initial networking with other youth climate justice organizations across Kansas. Our vision for the network is to provide free networking and other youth environmental groups opportunities to work and learn with each other, new people and organizations, building capacity through hosted workshops, a quick way to share action alerts and events from organizations, and expanding organization spaces. If you would like to join the network or would just like some more information, you can definitely contact us through several ways that are listed on the slide and that I'm going to drop in the chat now. And I'll tell you a little bit about the Kansas Youth Power Coalition as well, just a second here. Okay, the Kansas Youth Power Coalition is a nonpartisan effort whose shared purpose is getting young people at the table where decisions are made. Its partners include, in alphabetical order, the Key Network, Loud Light, NAACP Youth Council, New Frontiers Project, Progeny, Root the Power, Sunrise Movement Lawrence, and Unite for Reproductive and Gender Equity. KYPC is hosting their Youth Advocacy Summit this week with several events starting last Sunday and through tomorrow, including advocacy trainings, voting rights and community representation panels, and hosting over 30 meetings with state legislators. Today, we have youth activists from several of the KYPC partner organizations here to discuss how each of our collective movements build power in partnership and the intersections of social movements and climate justice organizing. I will also now drop some contact information for the Kansas Youth Power Coalition. Just a second here. Okay, and Lydia, if you were here earlier, provided some discussion on land during the legislative briefing, and she will be our moderator for this afternoon. So I'll do a quick introduction of her here. Lydia began as a farm apprentice at Gibbs Road Farm and Cultivate KC, which is now KC Farm School. She has organized with National Young Farmers Coalition, Hudson Valley and Kansas City chapters. She's intent on the need for more farmers and more farms, looking most to small scale traditional and indigenous methods of food and economy production, especially in this incredible prairie ecosystem. Lydia has been involved with KC Farm School since their beginning and has found as a founding board co-chair. In 2021, she returned to KCFS as farm director, eager with curiosity and a humble heart to learn from the land and community to produce as much food as possible in loving, regenerating ways. Lydia, I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to you for the rest of our introductions.
Great. Thank you so much, Erin. Thanks, Wealth Day and CEP and all of the partners. And I'm so excited, and Kansas City Farm School so excited to get to know about the Key Network and all of the youth that are involved, because as you heard, we teach folks about farming and we want young folks that are active like this. So I'm going to just give a shout out to the names and organizations that are represented, and their bios will be up. But then the first question is actually them getting to talk a little bit about it. So we've got Donovan Dillon from Loud Light. We've got Bertie Alt from Loud Light. We've got Joel Campbell from Sunrise Movement. And we've got Alanda Lerma from Root the Power, and Tyler Williams from Progeny. So don't worry that you didn't get to read all that. They're all going to get a chance to speak. So that's the first question for you all. Tell us a bit about your organization, and additionally, what drew you to join YPC. So we'll go in that order of introduction. So first is Donovan.
Hi, so did you just want a little bit about us or just a little bit about our organization?
Both.
Okay, so Here, I'll just give my little personal blurb. So my name is Donovan. I'm in Lawrence, Kansas, and I'm a freshman at the University of Kansas. Something that like really drew me into Youth Power Coalition is I've gone to realize, especially being in like the political and like advocacy like realm, that no one really listens to young people besides other young people. So having a coalition that centers this is super important for the work that we're doing, and also just like the future of our state and communities. And that's something that's like really important to me. Brittany, do you wanna?
Yeah. So I'm Brittany. I'm a senior at the University of Kansas. And yeah, just echoing everything Donovan said, our work with the Student Power Campaign is completely focused on like the youth right to vote and the college student right to vote. And being a part of something like Youth Power Coalition, I don't know, energizes me a lot with stuff like that. And it makes me really excited to continue to advocate for our voting rights.
Yeah. And as Bertie said, we're the Student Power Campaign coordinators, which just is a campaign focused on expanding voting infrastructure for college students across the state of Kansas. And Loud Light is a nonprofit organization that centers like youth issues and voting rights.
Whoa, what a power team. Thanks for
you.
sharing. And I love that you're coming to us together. Joel Campbell from the Sunrise Movement, you want to share a little bit about your organization and why you're involved in YPC?
Yeah, so I'm from the Sunrise Movement Lawrence, which is the it's the Lawrence chapter of the Sunrise Movement, which is a national movement to stop climate change and create millions of good jobs in the process. So we're very focused on environmental justice and that sort of thing. Primarily, we've been focused on local things in the past, like talking to like the city commission or the county commission about, you know, trying to get the Green New Deal, or talking about like shutting down a coal plant or something like that. So joining the Youth Power Coalition was kind of a step up for us because, you know, it's more state level stuff. But I think what drew us to the Youth Power Coalition is just that Sunrise is also a youth organization specifically. Like it's built into our founding principles that we are supposed to be run by youth, and because, you know, the youth are going to have the biggest say on climate issues because we're going to be the ones who are most affected by it. So yeah, that's what brought us to the Youth Power Coalition. And myself, I'm a sophomore at the University of Kansas, and I'm majoring in mechanical engineering, and hopefully I'm going to help with sustainable efforts in the future. So
Amazing. I love, yeah, totally putting that into perspective about who's coming along and who's going to be caring for all of this. Next, we have Alanda Lerma from Root the Power.
Thank you. So my name is Alanda Lerma. Like Lydia said, I go by she, her, aya pronouns. I attend Wichita State University. I'm currently studying abroad in England. So it's about 7 p.m. over here. And I'm very glad I was able to join you guys today. And I'm with the Power, part of Destination Innovation Incorporation. A little bit about why I even wanted to join with the Power is because I was in high school, very eager, very passionate about getting involved in my communities, trying to be the representation I didn't see within my faculty and staff in high school, within the public system in general, and trying to advocate for mental health resources. And then upon finding the application to be part of the Power, similar to Joel, it explained and expressed that it's youth-led, and I was very, very attracted to that because it's very difficult to find organizations that truly voice the opinions of their youth and allow them to create ideas and projects to then in turn encourage more youth to be a part of a larger message, and hopefully that reach more communities. And they are centered with a lot of civic engagement, which I have learned so much of how to create candidate forums, how to be nonpartisan, but still share vital information that everyone needs to know. We've done a lot of door knocking, a lot of canvassing, going door to door, asking neighbors how they're doing, getting information from people versus trying to spread information from, trying to avoid, the political sides, just trying to get to the root of the issue and just hear from the people, see what their issues are, and hopefully reach the people in power, reach our legislators, reach our senators, and get more information across. So yeah, that's a little bit more about me and Root the Power.
Awesome. Thanks, Alanda. We've got an international ambassador representing from Kansas. So good. And then lastly, we've got Tyler Williams from Progeny.
Hello, my name is Tyler Williams. I'm one of the original youth leaders with Progeny, now full-time staff. So Progeny is a youth adult partnership organization really focused on juvenile justice related issues in the state of Kansas, taking those who have either been directly or indirectly impacted and making their voices heard, whether it's in local or statewide activities. What really brought us into the Youth Power Coalition, we have received a couple of different trainings on organizing trainings with some of our youth leaders from the organization Loud Light that we found very beneficial. And when they recommended the Youth Power Coalition to us, we found that it would be a great idea to connect with other organizations who are passionate about youth, to learn more about some of their needs, to help better address and help them thrive in this community. Thank you.
Great. We love to hear about that intergenerational work, because so many of the other panelists talked about not being heard, not feeling heard. So that's awesome to have something bringing together the youth and adult generations. And Erin's dropping some really great links in the chat. And I just want to make sure there's a little bit more about individually all of our panelists. I just jumped in because I want to hear all of their amazing answers to all of this awesome work. But you can check those out and then check out their respective organizations. So they're in the chat. Yeah, also just thank you all for being here. Thank you for taking this time. We know that it's an awesome week of all of this action, but it's really amazing as a person between youth and adult to see you all and to have you be spending your time doing this. And you have heaps of folks that are cheering you on and are so grateful to have you. So just honoring your time and all of your energy. The next question is, in what ways do you see your advocacy issues as climate justice issues? So you all talked a lot about the intersectional issues that we're facing, how Lauryn Hill, everything is everything, right? We get that, but specifically, how do you see your advocacy issues as climate justice issues? And we'll just go in that same order of those organizations. So we'll start with Loud Light.
Okay, yeah. So like Donovan and I said, with Loud Light and with the Student Power campaign, we focus a lot on voting rights. And that is just sort of the baseline for like everything that happens. Like any kind of justice that's going to happen, I think starts with voting rights. The ability to see yourself represented, your values represented, like who you are as a person, the ability to actually elect people. So like the way that redistricting happens, the way that, if places are gerrymandered, if you've got predetermined elections, that's not representation. And Joel talked about this a little bit last summer. I worked with Joel and the Sunrise Project, sorry. And we like met with like our city commission and some of those folks, and they were really open to having those conversations, which is really great, but you don't always get that. And I think that voting plays a lot into that, of like being able to actually vote people in who maybe they don't talk about environmental justice, but they're open to having a conversation about it, and you can put those ideas in their head and you can bring those to the forefront of things. And I think that that starts with voting. Do you want to? Yeah,
just like adding on to that, also just like electing people who like reflect your values and like different values. Birdie and I, there's just a panel before this with like a lot of amazing legislators. And I personally like worked with them, and like having people who are like so open-minded to hear your perspectives and your narratives and like implement that into like policy that not only affects like your community, but the entire state, I feel like is super important, especially for environmental justice. While you can do like local organizing that like impacts like your individual community, I think it's important to also like address the issue on like an institutional and like national level. And I feel like, especially for the state of Kansas, that's very, very important.
Wow, yeah. So in order to even vote on any of these climate issues, in order to get them into legislation, we have to have our voting rights. So that's an amazing connection. Thank you for that work. And then Sunrise Movement, Joel, do you want to talk a little bit about that? About what ways you see your advocacy issues as climate justice issues?
Yeah, so my answer might not be quite as interesting because we are pretty explicitly a climate justice organization. So, you know, basically all of our stuff is pretty much directly climate activism and that sort of thing. But I think it's just interesting how many things relate to environmental justice. Like, I know we're going to hear from everyone else, but just like how many pieces like voting rights and, you know, transportation equity and, you know, different kinds of like utility equity and that sort of thing, like making funding for affordable housing. It's just like so many things tie into it. And I think, you know, it's really cool to see so many people come together on environmental issues because it encompasses so much of, you know, the progressive idea, if that sort of makes sense. But I guess like specifically what bills we were focusing on is, you know, things about, there were a lot of bills for, you know, renewable energy restrictions that we're going to go through. And thankfully, none of them made it out of committee in like a meaningful way, but I'm concerned about the future. So I think the fight for renewable energy in Kansas is going to be ongoing. So we're definitely going to see more of that in the future.
Awesome. Yeah, just like Wealth Day, right? Wealth is that acronym for everything. So it's water, energy, air, land, transportation, health. And just when we were doing the legislation briefs this morning, everybody was so amped up and really wants to communicate about their topics. And that's because they're all connected. It's because we all have a stake in each of these issues. And that's why CEP, the state table, why Wealth Day exists. So it's perfect. And route to power, Alondra. What ways do you see your advocacy issues as climate justice issues?
A lot of the advocate issues that we focus on with the power has been mental health. And the way that we try to address that is by gaining information to people. For example, a lot of people don't know that they need to register to vote. So we share that information and we do our best to let everyone know. But we also think mental health is part of a climate justice issue because you are not as a community, we're not able to move forward if we ourselves are in crisis. And to avoid being in crisis, we be able to make sure we are taking care of ourselves and also each other. So be able to be honest and upfront whenever working in a group or in partnership with somebody else. We need to be able to have that open communication and also be able to allow ourselves to take a rest so we can continue fighting these big and enormous issues that we keep having to confront each day, because we're going to put in a position that we have to, you know, solve these issues, these climate justice issues before they get a lot out of hand, a lot more out of a hand than they already are. So yes.
Yeah, so important, Alondra. Thanks for speaking about that. We've got some hearts coming through. And we talk about on Wealth Day that there are communities that are disparately impacted by this. So you get intergenerational trauma going on, you get the weight of having to be a fence line community, a direct community impacted by these things. And
yeah, of course.
yeah,
I was like,
go ahead.
Sorry to cut in some more, but yeah, that also leads to us advocating for Medicaid expansion, as well as getting mental health resources within schools, getting, you know, student loan relief grants for mental health specialists, just having those priorities, just to have access to mental health resources for young people, especially. Because I know that's another reason why I joined with the power, because like I was like, we need to get this into schools. We need to get people be able to have a place where they can grow more in a stable environment versus having to balance everything on their own.
Wow, powerful. Yeah, having some space to process all the grief and the heaviness that comes with climate chaos and with this work in general. So thanks for being an advocate for that. And then finally, Tyler, with Progeny, in what ways do you see your advocacy issues as climate justice issues?
Well, I definitely feel like there's a lot of the similar things that have been brought up when it comes to a lot of the things that we focus on, mental health, foster care youth, housing resources, and needs for youth who are either about to enter the juvenile justice system or coming back home from the juvenile system. There's been a lot of shortcomings in all fields. And I feel like there is a lot of room for advocacy and a lot of room for change. And how we begin these conversations, we bring those youth who have the direct lived experience, we get their messages, we have listening sessions, and we gather the information and bring it collectively to have these conversations with legislators about why we really feel that these individual pieces are important and how we actually serve to rehabilitate the youth of our system. There's more than just releasing them off of probation. So yeah, there's a bunch of different little things that when we talk about our youth, we forget about, and sometimes they're the most vulnerable that are forgotten.
Wow, yeah. And just the experience of, on top of having to deal with the climate chaos that we're all dealing with detention and how isolating that can be. So thanks for bringing that voice and helping bring those folks' voice into this action. Oh, wow. This panel is so amazing and encouraging. Thank you already. You all mentioned a little bit here and there some specific pieces, which if you saw the panel this morning, Zach and I talked about the land briefing, and I just had to give the big overview, and then Zach gave the specific bills. It's something that as a farmer, I'm not always super great at knowing the specifics, but and the bill numbers, but we're getting there and working on that. So just for folks on the call that are wanting to support your work, that are wanting to support these organizations. And for everyone, there will be more information in the Wealth Day toolkits. So you don't have to feel like you have to catch every single bit of it, but if you all could just highlight for us, what are your top priorities this legislative session in the next year? And what support do you need to get there? So we'll just go in that same order. So Donovan and Birdie from Loudlight. And I'll repeat it one more time. What are your top priorities this legislative session, and what support do you need to get there?
Whew. So what are our top priorities in the legislative session? So like within our organization, like everyone has like different like issues that they care about and stuff like that. But some of the big things that Loudlight has been advocating against are a lot of like election integrity laws that have been popping up that make voting harder for people across like multiple different communities and identities to be able to vote, along with the congressional maps, which split up like very important communities of like interest, communities of color, young people, college students, and gerrymandered maps aren't okay. They like predetermine election results and split up important communities that should have access to their voting power. So those are some very big legislative priorities for us this and next session. And along with that, we've also been working with a representative on a bill in regards to the student power campaign, and that should pop up on your radar sometime soon, hopefully.
Yeah, and in terms of support, I think one of the things that helps the most is, I mean, obviously like spreading word about giving testimony and like helping people do that, but also just like dispelling misinformation about like Donovan said, like these integrity bills, about like protecting our elections. Our elections are not under threat. They're not, we don't have that voter fraud. They're just like a way to keep people from voting. And I think sort of promoting like accurate and correct information about the actual status of our elections and what these bills are actually doing helps momentous,ly.
And then like lastly, I'd add is just like uplifting young voices. I know like for like a lot of our organizations, like a lot of like staff are like younger people. Like at Loudlight, I wouldn't say anyone is like over the age of like probably like 50. So like we have like a pretty young staff, and like working in like the political field and being taken seriously, especially as like a young person advocating for like such important issues that like you hold near and dear to your heart and communities, like other people taking us seriously, especially adults like within the field, is super important to like not only spread our message, but like spread the work that we're doing and like make young voices heard.
Yeah.
Here. Amazing. One, congratulations on getting that bill moving. Awesome work. And just connected to the last panel, there's a, it's called the Future Panel, the Future Caucus, and it's all legislature folks who are under 40 years old. It's bipartisan. Those folks are working together. They're trying to get bills organized. They're trying to figure out where the common ground is. So another awesome youth-led effort. And also it just makes me think, Donovan and Bertie, and maybe you all, like, what are we doing having an event at any time without a youth panel? KC Farm School definitely loves youth, but it's like, that's the intergenerational work. We have a heap of adult voices. So let's just get youth panels into every event. Okay, so then Sunrise Movement. Joel, what are your top priorities this legislative session, and what support do you need to get there?
So kind of unfortunately, I feel like the climate battle in Kansas is very uphill. So I feel like a lot of what our work ends up being is, this bill is bad, and help us say that it's bad. And so I feel like that's sort of the support that we need, because, with the recent attempts to reduce the amount of wind energy or solar energy in Kansas, a lot of that is just pushing back against those type of bills. And then in the past, we've seen like the state try to impose regulations on like municipalities that would make them unable to, make their communities more sustainable. We saw it last year with Senate Bill 24, which is very infamous in Sunrise because it threw everything off for the city of Lawrence, because essentially it prevents municipalities from being able to change their energy makeup by type of energy generation. So Lawrence cannot mandate that we have more solar and wind energy. Only individual customers can. So that's very much in the way. And now they're doing the same thing with the plastic bag ban, the ban of plastic bag bans. And which is also interesting because recently Lawrence started talking about a plastic bag ban. So it kind of almost seems like they're watching us a little bit. But I think overall, like, a lot of our work ends up being pushing back against those kind of bills, and then, putting as much weight behind the few that do get through that we actually agree with, like the water board, and that sort of thing. So I feel like that for the foreseeable future, that seems to be what we want, is just, putting our weight behind the bills that actually matter for us, and hopefully seeing more pro-renewable energy bills in the near future, and then pushing back as hard as we can against those bills that would restrict things that would make our communities more sustainable.
Awesome, thanks for sharing that. And it sounds like also something that could be some bipartisan work of really wanting to have some of our decision-making localized for us in the communities where we're living. So thanks for sharing that. Alondra, what are your and Root to Power's legislative priorities this year, and what support do you need to get there?
My priorities is expanding the Medicaid expansion so that it can improve the economy for all of us in Kansas. And the support that we would need is that you guys keep showing up. Like today, attending this youth panel, like, props for you to showing up, because it gets scary to attend these things that you may not know a lot of information about. So I'm proud of you guys for showing up today. So thank you for showing up. And my suggestion is for you guys to call your state legislators. And if you don't know who those are, I suggest researching. It can be fun. You get to figure out, who represents you, and you have the right to call them and say, I support Medicaid expansion. It's good for our economy and the health of all Kansans. That's what I would recommend you guys do to support us, as well as attending the Yes Coalition Advocacy Week when they're annually hosted. And then ask your school board members how they plan to fund mental health resources into your schools, and also to just be present and keep asking questions. Be present, be heard, be loud. Doesn't matter how many times you have to ask for help or keep knocking on doors. Somebody will open the door eventually. You get a lot of no's, but that one yes is everything.
Yes, thank you for calling us to persistence, dedication, and commitment, and keeping going. Erin dropped a spot in the chat that you can find your legislators. Awesome. Okay, finally, Tyler, what do you and Progeny have as your top priorities this year, and what support do you need to get there?
Yeah, so we have a few bills that we have been watching. The two that we are looking for are 2471, HB 2471 and HB 2557. 2471 is currently on the Committee for Corrections and Juvenile Justice, and it is a shackling bill that looks to prohibit restraints under the revised Kansas Juvenile Justice Code. And this will help push to get Kansas in line with 33 other states when it comes to using restraints on youth in courts. And then HB 2257 is currently in the Judiciary Committee, and that one is the expungement bill for juveniles not to be denied solely on their inability to pay. Those are the two big bills that we are focusing on this year. We do have a fines and fees bill that is currently in an informational hearing, so follow us to stay tuned on that. And yeah, feel free to check out our website for more information on some of the reports that we've put together, and follow us on social media to keep in the loop of what's going on next.
Great, thanks for those specifics, Tyler. That's great to have. So that's the questions that we're gonna have all of the folks answer. There is one coming later that I want everyone to answer, but for now, I'm gonna call in some specific folks, and then just feel free, other panelists, if you're like, hey, I wanna say something to that, then just jump in. So to start with, Alanda, do you think there's a perfect recipe for building youth power?
I think the perfect recipe, I think there is, but it's not sticking to the same recipe. I feel like the perfect recipe is trying it and suiting it to the person that you're trying to serve. For example, like if you're trying to get a Hispanic community to come out, you need to like mix up your recipe to best suit their needs, so like you can best be able to listen and take notes, and then be able to represent them whenever, and also help them to figure out information that they may not have been presented to before due to like misinformation by the media or whoever. And then if you're talking to different youth, different groups of youth, for example, if you're talking to middle schoolers, if you use the same recipe to grab their attention, high schoolers may not be as receptive as it in a similar way, like fashion or form. So in summary, I really think that the perfect recipe is mixing it up, trying different things, adding new spices, trying to figure out what that person you're trying to cater to likes best.
Wow, such a delicious perspective. I like how you put that. Okay, what do you see as your greatest challenge to your activism? And I'd love to hear from Joel first, and then from Birdie and Donovan.
Yeah, so I think like for me personally, as well as for Sunrise in general, I think finding a balance between activism and other stuff, because we are in a college town and most of the people in our hub are college students. And so, you know, there are a lot of other priorities going on at the same time. And so say, you know, like around finals week, we won't be able to get as much stuff done. But, you know, around the summertime, we have way more people able to do way more stuff. So I think just being able to find a balance between how much activism am I doing and how much do I need to focus on schoolwork or on both of those things is really important, especially, you know, as youth activists, many of us are students. And so that's a very important balance to strike. But it's not only about like finding that balance between activism and other stuff. I think it's finding that balance to know how much activism and things you can do before burnout. And that's something that Sunrise actually has baked into our founding principles. You know, we want to prioritize the mental health of our members. First and foremost, taking a break to prevent burnout is way, way better than burning out for several months. And it's just, you know, it's incredibly important to take care of yourself because, you know, that's important to continuing this fight. But it's also very hard to do, you know, because the more you look in, at least for my personal experience, the more you look into activism. The more you realize there is to do, and the less you feel like you're doing. So it can be sort of a slippery slope, and it can be very difficult to find that balance.
For sure. We talk about in regenerative agriculture, if we are caring for the soil, but not for the soil tenders, then it's not really a sustainable ecosystem. So thanks for bringing that to the forefront. Loudlight, you want to share about that, about what you see as your greatest, or no, what you see as your greatest challenge to your activism?
Yeah, so there are a couple. So first, I would say just like the institutional barriers. There's so much like bureaucracy, especially like when you get to like the statewide level of like trying to like be heard, trying to get a meeting with XYZ person, and just like the amount of like trouble we went through like with this beginning of the year with our campaign, and quite literally just trying to figure out who was in charge of voting on campus took us at least 3 weeks, which is absolutely ridiculous. And then like when you're trying to make change and like putting so much effort and time into it on top of being a student, and it gets halted by like not being able to get a meeting for 3 weeks and things like that, or like someone not taking you seriously because you're a student and not a tenured professor, it gets to be a lot. On top of that, I would say that sometimes like I'm like the stigmas that are perpetuated I have like within myself, and that sometimes is like a really big barrier for me. Sometimes I'll hop on like a meeting and like realize like I'm the youngest person in the room, and then I'm like, what am I doing here? Like no one's going to take me seriously and things like that. So like battling on like a more like institutional and like personal level, those are like both like pretty big barriers and challenges.
I think an important thing that I want to pull from what Donovan just said is like people really don't value like youth thought and youth opinion and the youth vote. Like they don't want it included. They don't want to hear it. They don't want it. And it does make it really difficult because we're both 19. So it's really weird when we're 19-year-olds with a bunch of 30, 40, 50-year-olds like doing the work. And then it's also makes it really hard to bring other students into it, to be like, hey, like, do you want to come to this meeting with us? Like, hey, do you want to canvas with us? Do you want to table with us? It makes it like really difficult to be like, this is work that like youth need to do. And it's like difficult work, but like, we got to do it to get it done.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, it's hard to like recruit people into movement when all that's standing in front of you is a closed door, like someone telling you that your opinion doesn't matter, like that your work isn't valid. So those are all pretty big challenges, but hey, we're still here, we're still doing the work. So
yes, totally hear you on that struggle, and thanks for sharing it. And also thank you for battling that, for pushing through and claiming your spot and claiming that spot for other young folks. Really, yeah, we really honor that. Well, I'm gonna skip down a little bit. This just leads to this question, and this is the one I want all of the panelists to answer because I think you all keep hitting on it a little bit. I want to know what brings you optimism and joy in this work. So we'll invert a little bit. I hope that's okay to ask all of you to answer it. But yeah, Tyler, do you want to start? What brings you joy and optimism in this work?
So for me, I do this work for the youth who were just like me. I went in at the age of 13, got out when I was 19, was on probation for 6 months and became homeless. And it was without the support of Progeny and the other nonprofits who had invested in me, I wouldn't be where I'm at. So it gives me a sense of fulfillment knowing that not only have I been invested in and that someone has seen my worth, I get to now use my experience to help the same youth understand their worth and their value to their community.
So good to hear that. Alanda, what brings you joy and optimism in this work?
I feel like it's a various of little things. For example, it could be helping someone register to vote. It can be like the aha moment where I get to like talk to a resident living in their home and then just them being happy to finally have someone to express their concerns to, or where I'm passing out hot dogs at a candidate forum, getting people to be, get the high hopes up, get them ready to hear the important information that's going to be shared to them. It can be hearing my colleagues talk about their inspirations. It's me being able to represent not only Hispanic, but also Latinx communities, because me being Latina and a woman as well, and a young person, I share the same age with the Loud Light members. I'm 19 as well. So like the age difference is very huge, but also being able to, like, in my case, I'm able to speak Spanish and English, being able to translate. I remember working the polls one night, not one night, but one of the 2020 elections, and being able to translate for this very wonderful couple who were voting for the first time. And I was just like, things like that, being able to make a small change, a small difference, and have it at least impact somebody, or if not somebody, have me grow more as a person.
Wow. Yeah. Love that energy. I super get hyped up by people too. So cool to hear about. I'm with you. Joel, what brings you joy and optimism in the work? You shared a little bit about the heaviness before and the need for balance.
Yeah, I think my answer is pretty similar to Alandra's, in that it's a lot about making connections with people, and like talking with, members of the community, talking with members of like our elected officials, even talking with other members of like the organization. Just making those connections is so huge. And especially because, in this age of the pandemic, a lot of our stuff has been online. And for me, especially, like, I only joined Activism after everything became online and, asynchronous and that sort of thing. So it's always kind of felt difficult to make that connection, but that means that when that connection is made, it's just like totally exhilarating, and is probably my favorite part of this whole thing. And like, when a rally goes well, or when you have strangers fighting for a cause that, you help them learn about, that matters to them, that like just kind of like blows my mind a little bit. And so I definitely feel like that is the best part of this for me.
So glad to hear that you do have some reprieve in that. And just drawing to attention, you all are the first generation navigating the world as it is, and it's changed so rapidly, and you're navigating that globalization and that interconnectedness and that disconnectedness. So really cool to hear about the ways that you're navigating that while doing your work, and how you're using that work to be more connected with folks. Donovan and Bertie, would you like to share what brings you optimism and joy in this work?
Yeah, so for me, and what keeps me going is just like the little things. Like, it's the fact that there are like 50 people here listening to this like young, diverse group of people. It's the fact that there's like a youth advocacy week in general. It's the fact that someone was willing to help two like 19-year-olds like craft a bill for the Kansas legislature. That's awesome. Like, seeing these people like smile, and the passion they have behind their words and their work is just like amazing. And like, that's what like keeps me going from like day to day, week to week.
Yeah, mine's a little different. So I like something that I talk about a lot and that truly brings me so much joy is just like the people that we work with, like the other people who work on different projects than us, like every week being able to see the amazing work that they're doing in their parts of Kansas and their specific focuses on the legislature. Our mentors, like Anita Austin and Melissa Styler, I'm like, they're just the most incredible people who will always support you no matter what. And it's really refreshing to see that, because like I have worked other jobs where it is a capitalist hellscape day in, day out. And this is not that. There's like genuine care to like make sure that we're okay, that we're getting the support that we need, that we're like working towards something, so that, when we're no longer youth, that we're no longer advocating for the student vote, or when we get our wins, there's like things to do after, and we know like what's going on. And it just like, it brings me joy to have that community of support like internally as we're doing our work.
Yeah. And I think it's beautiful how like we all are here for like different reasons, different causes, but like we can all like appreciate like the intersectionality of our work, and like how at the end of the day it's to like benefit Kansans, like no matter your like political affiliation, no matter your race, your gender, anything like that. It's just to like help people and like make a better, brighter future for everyone.
Yeah, I love that. Wealth Day for all Kansans. Thanks for sharing those things. And I hope that you all continue to find some joy in this work and continue to find support. I'm going to ask one more question, and then if anybody has a question that they want to ask from one of the specific organizations or panelists, then you can just put it in the chat and I'll see it and try to ask them. And then at the end, I just want to give a chance for a last statement from everyone. So yeah, I think we have time for that. Okay, I'm going to read the question and then expand on it a little bit. So in terms of resources or momentum, is there anything you wish you had more of that could make youth advocacy more powerful in Kansas, like YPC? And I know we talked a little bit about it before, but Alondra, I was just wondering if you could give some more specifics of what is it that you need from the folks on this call, from CEP, from the state table, in order to move this work of yours forward?
Yeah, of course. So the actions that I brought up earlier was to keep showing up, to keep attending panels, to keep going to your school board members, your representatives, and for our advocacy issues, calling your state legislators, asking them to call them and then say, I support Medicaid expansion, and it's good for everyone, especially for our mental health and for our students who need it, and for our mental health specialists who are coming out with tons of like student loans and everything. But overall, I just really want to say thank you for everyone who showed up. And honestly, I really hope you guys continue and something has sparked within you. And if you guys have an issue, if you see an issue in your community, that you come up and you start brainstorming with other people and getting that issue across and getting that done. Yeah.
Awesome. So more community engagement and organizing, developing, yeah, building it up together. I lied a little bit because I want this question too. Do you have a vision or spectrum of success for your movement? And a lot of times in this work, right, when we talk about burn up, we're pushing against so much. We're pushing against cultural norms. We're pushing against institutionalized everything, especially racism, ageism. We're dealing with bureaucracy. We're dealing with climate chaos in itself. So I'm just wondering if a few of you want to talk about what your vision for success means. What is the world that you see as possible? Joel, could you start that for us?
Yeah, so Sunrise is very, very focused on the Green New Deal, which kind of has several things laid out for, just like what our measure of success would be. And so like in Lawrence specifically, they have actually passed 5 principles of the Green New Deal, or 5 principles of sustainability. It kind of depends on who you ask. And they've been prevented from actually implementing those, 1, by just slow-moving bureaucracy, and 2, by the Kansas legislature, which actively is pushing back against Lawrence's efforts to move forward. But sort of what that would look like more is, our energy coming only from renewable energy, or our energy only coming from renewable sources, and then the jobs it takes to move us from our coal-based, oil-based system right now to a renewable-based system. The jobs that would come from that would be locally sourced, and they would have livable wages. We should be making sure everyone has access to housing, access to food, access to water, and making transportation green and equitable, and also working to dismantle systemic injustices. And I feel like that's a lot of stuff. But I think Sunrise's vision is just very big because all of those things are so, interconnected. Like there are so many things that relate to each other that we kind of have to focus on all of this stuff, just because that is the nature of climate justice activism. So I definitely think that's what that looks like, a little more specifically for Lawrence. Yeah.
Definitely a future I want to live in, Joel. Sounds incredible. And thank you for reminding us that that's totally possible. Do any of the other panelists want to speak to that, about what success looks like? What is the future that you envision?
So I can talk a little bit about progeny vision. Our biggest vision is to look to close the juvenile justice system of the state ran and invest into community-based alternatives. We want to continue off of the legacy of Senate Bill 367, continue making improvements, making changes, investing in our youth, and making sure that even though they make a mistake, they can still grow, rehabilitate, and become striving, successful members of this community.
Can definitely get behind that, Tyler. And it's totally possible. Totally possible. That world is here and it's coming. We just need to support these youth ideas. We have about 5 minutes left. So I just want to make sure one of the questions we'll get to at the end, but just a little shout out. Paris asked, how can we get involved in y'all's org? So I would probably say socials. You can hit up the websites, but are there any specific actions that are coming up that you want some human power behind? Sorry, I didn't start with anyone. Loud Light, do you have anything specific you'd like to say to that?
We don't have any like action items, I guess, around like any like particular events other than like try to attend some other like Yes Week events throughout the end of the week. But also like I think showing up is important, but also like action is just as important as like showing up to like meetings, things like this. So I would say like for like elected officials, people who hold office, people in like the nonprofit space, think of ways that you can like uplift and prioritize like youth voices, reach out to like younger people. Don't always just expect them to come to you, and like take the time to do that work because it's important. Other than that, if something someone on this call has said has like resonated with you, reach out, like start a conversation and see which ways that you can like help us in our work.
Also register to vote if you're not registered to vote.
Great, thank you for that. There's some links being dropped in the chat for the rest of the weeks for the Yes Week, and yeah, some of the organizations. Also, another thing that I want to bring up, KC Farm School does this a lot of partnering on grants. So when we partner together for grants for funding, a lot of times our voice is louder, and we can really use that power. So if you have an awesome grant writer at your organization, then you could support these youth organizations by joining with them, by writing letters of support for their grants and connecting in that way. We just have a few minutes, so I just want to give everybody a last chance. That sounds so intense, last chance. But any last words that you want to share, and specifically answering one of the questions in the chat of what advice would you give to young people in Kansas wanting to be involved, but also do you have suggestions for how to reach the youth that don't believe in these systems, that are at burnout or are disenfranchised, that aren't represented? So we'll just go in that same order we've been going, and I know you just spoke Loud Light, but Brittany and Donovan.
Can you repeat the question? I'm so sorry.
No, it was a long question. So either last words or how you like what you would say, what advice you would give to get young people that are wanting to be involved, or if you want to answer it this way, how would you get young folks involved that are not believing in the system?
Yeah, so for the first part, I would say just like take those first steps, and they don't have to be big. Everyone has something that they care about, something that affects them, that they want to see change in the world, and like baby steps, one step at a time, do something to like move towards like changing that, or like fighting against stigmas, or like advocating for like a certain issue. Do you have anything on that?
Yeah, I was gonna say, just like echoing what Donovan said, like finding one issue that someone really cares about and you can connect with them on, like voting rights is a really broad topic. So talking about like voting rights in the environmental justice aspect, or voting rights in like the reproductive rights aspect, is like a really great way to reach people. But also like actions don't have to be big, they can be small. It can be as simple as like have a conversation with your roommate or your parents about this issue that you see, or bring it up in class, or do a little research and inform yourself. It doesn't have to be like big steps to get involved. It can be whatever you're in your capacity to do, is what should be your priority.
Yeah. And then going to Kathleen's question on like suggestions for reaching youth that don't believe in any of our systems. I think first, like going back to why these youth don't believe in these systems and realizing that work can exist outside of them, and that like often for young people, they haven't been like socialized and like institutionalized to like only view these systems as the means for like change and stuff like that, and realizing the power that comes with that, and the power of like youth and their thoughts and their ideas, and how those hold just as much validity for not existing within that system that you operate in, and seeing the ways that that thought process and that like drive can be used to like make change.
Incredible. Yeah, and just as you all have been saying, there's an endpoint for every single interest or concern or experience that you've had. You all have so many great ways to be involved. Joel, could you speak to that and Sunrise Movement?
Yeah, so I think appealing to youth, a very big part of it is just having youth representation. Youth are going to want to be involved more often if they're going to be involved with other youth. And so I feel like that's, representation is so important. And so, finding other young people who are interested in the same things as you, because I feel like a lot of young people are very interested in this sort of thing, but either feel it's a lost cause, like we've talked about a little bit, or just aren't sure how to get involved. So just putting yourself out there as a very like publicly youth-centered organization can be very important like that. And I think the thing I would say about youth who are, feel very tired of the system and they don't believe in the system, neither do we. That's why we're fighting to change it. And that's sort of like the thing that really kind of brought me into Sunrise is it's very like Sunrise feels very, out there and very like in your face about stuff. It's not like playing to the system. It's like, we need change now, and this is how we're going to do it. So I feel like that's a very good way to appeal to youths who feel not great about the system, because neither do I. So that's why I'm here.
Such a great point, Joel. Yeah, we at Casey Farm School want young folks to believe that farming is an option as a career. And it sounds like that's what you all are saying. We want you to understand that this kind of activism and works is an option. You can hang out with people, you can have fulfillment, you can make change. That's great. Alanda?
So the first part of like encouraging people to get involved, have conversations, similar to like everyone else is saying, have conversations. And if you're a little introverted, I recommend just researching more about the issue that you care about, getting involved, having the facts behind what's going on, and then hopefully that encourages you to speak out and have more communications be crossed, and maybe email someone instead of having a face-to-face conversation, because that can be intimidating being a young person, or at any point, because sometimes it's scary, especially being online for the last 2.5 years. It can be a little awkward having to talk in person for the first time in a while. So that's what I recommend for the first part. And for the second half, if you don't believe in the system, if you're someone who is trying to find out why no one's believing the system, for instance, in my case, I want to understand why. I need to educate myself on the history behind why youth don't believe in our systems. And also me being as a youth, being able to just figure out why and just do more research. Honestly, I'm really heavy on doing investigation and looking up, maybe going to like different panelists like this one, and also just looking up journals, history, seeing what's actually our history, seeing what's actually being taught, what is not being taught, and seeing what we can find, and then asking our peers, asking our friends, asking our parents questions to see what they know, and then compare it, and then share that information.
Amazing points, Alanda. Thanks for bringing that up too. It's tough to be together when we don't know how to be together. Yeah, you all are facing that struggle and doing it. Yeah, amazing. Tyler, do you have any advice for folks either that want to get involved or those folks that are not wanting to be involved?
So yeah, when it comes to progeny and a lot of the stuff that we do, we have opportunities for everyone, whether you're directly involved, a youth who has been in the system, whether you've been indirectly involved, a family member of someone who has been in the juvenile system, or even someone who is just concerned about the events going on in their community. There's ways to reach out, there's ways to support, whether it's in volunteering, showing up to events, giving testimony. There's different ways you can learn more. We have our website that has a bunch of great information. We have our virtual prison experience. So feel free to take a walkthrough of what it was like for a lot of these youth that was put together on a national basis. And for those who may feel nervous when it comes to this work, you know, one of my favorite quotes that has helped me get through a lot of this is, in a world of pain and darkness, be the light that you want to see in the world. And so you got this. We can all make the change that we want to see.
Thank you so much for that, Tyler. Yeah, that's bringing up some tears, I think, of both grief and joy for me. Yeah, I just want to say thank you all so much, not only for being with us, but for the work that you're all doing. And, you know, you all are a great example of, you come from different places, different backgrounds, different races, different beliefs, different demeanors and ways that you communicate. And it's so powerful, and I'm not exaggerating, to see it together. And I can echo what's going on in the chat, and also probably for a lot of people, I only wish that I could have been that informed and communicative and empowered when I was your age, and how grateful we are that you are coming up in this generation. So I hope that you can either look at the chat or save it, or somehow somebody from CEP or Wealth Day could get it to you all, because it's really encouraging to be able to read them. Yeah, just thank you again one more time. I reckon Aaron will say it, but just claps for you all, love for you all. And I'm going to turn it back over to Aaron so they can close us out.
Thanks, Lydia. That was such a great panel from everyone today. So I just want to thank each of you for joining us today. Really good, all great conversation. If anyone has any questions for any of our panelists, you can definitely reach out to them directly that you've seen through links in the chat. Also, just a reminder that you can access organizational information through speaker bios that are listed on our event page. That's also been linked in the chat. I'm very excited to watch the Kansas Youth Power Coalition continue to build power across the state. I'm sure that you can certainly tell today we have a ton of great leaders here in Kansas. So just very incredible thing to see, to be a part of, and to witness. So we are coming up on our 2-hour break until our closing session at 4 p.m. But I'm going to go ahead and turn it back to Sarah to see if there are any other announcements. Thank you again, everybody, for your time and your insights today.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron. And I want to echo my gratitude for the panelists and to Lydia for such an awesome conversation. And yes, the chat was pretty lively, just in terms around acknowledging what amazing work you're doing and how inspiring it is to see. So keep up the good work, keep fighting for all of these issues that are so incredibly important, not just for EJ, environmental justice work, but obviously for the future of our communities and kind of democracy at large. For the remainder of the afternoon, please use your toolkit to engage with the issues that are important to you and of your choosing. I feel like we missed an opportunity in the toolkit to include a section specific for policies priorities supported by Kansas Youth and the Kansas Youth Power Coalition. So that is a mental note for future. Please be sure to follow these organizations on social media and stay in the loop and find ways to support them and their work. In terms of general announcements, we'll keep the Zoom open in case you have any questions, but feel free to hop off since it's a 2-hour break, and then rejoin us at 4 o'clock for our closing session. And also, please take a few minutes to complete an evaluation about today's events. We very much appreciate your feedback. I just dropped that link in the chat. I think Dorothy also put something in there, but I'd be remiss if I didn't remind everyone to submit a video in support of renewable energy using the links provided in the toolkit and in the chat. And in the spirit of finding the balance between advocacy and taking care of ourselves, please also find some time this afternoon to step away from your screen, maybe get outside for some fresh air and find a way to be inspired and moved by, as Donovan says, the little things. Or for Lydia, time for a nap, hopefully in the sunshine. So yeah, with that, we will reconvene and we'll see y'all back here at 4 o'clock. Thank you.